You doing? How you doing? I go by the name Tapiwa Mason Musiwa, and I think some of you might know me, but some of you might not know me, but that's okay. Basically, I just thought I would come here today. I want to do a little presentation, and this is in response of the events that I saw yesterday on social media, the events that I saw yesterday on all the news network coming from Zimbabwe. You know what I mean? I'm a boy, I'm from Zimbabwe, and these are the kind of things that we need to be talking about, because these are the things that we need to be discussing here on a social media platform. So today, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, my name is Tapiwa Mason, and I know that some of you might have seen some of my past videos that I've done, but I'm pretty new to this. So even though I've got a YouTube channel, and if you go to YouTube, you can go and check out my channel, which is called the Motivational Channel. But today, I just thought I'm going to come here and talk about the Zimbabwean situation. And yesterday, this November the 20th in 2019, we saw a lot of things that police brutality that's been happening in Zimbabwe when the opposition party leader Nelson Chamisa decided to give a speech at the MDC headquarters, which is called the Morgan Tsvangirai House. And obviously, Nelson Chamisa is a very, very popular man, an opposition leader who is actually more popular than the actual acting president, and obviously he's going to draw so much crowd. He's going to have so many people who are going to come and attend to try to have a glimpse of him, because a lot of people haven't got no hope. A lot of people are looking for some kind of a heroic figure who's going to emancipate us from this economic situation that we've got, political situation that we've got, a social situation that we've got, and a lot of people, they think Nelson Chamisa is the man. So what happened yesterday was that when Nelson Chamisa came to give his speech, and this was all planned, everything was all legal. They even got permission to do this thing, to do this speech, and I mean, Nelson Chamisa couldn't even foretell or foresee what's going to happen, how many people going to show up, because he's just a popular. I mean, I live in the UK here, and in the UK there's two main political parties, which is the Tories and the Labour Party, and obviously Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister of the UK right now. But let's say if Jeremy Corbyn was going to have some kind of a rally or some kind of a speech, obviously his supporters going to show up. His supporters going to turn up, because they want to hear what he might say, even if they can't even get into the venue, right? The venue, the selected venue, but there's going to be people that's going to be loitering around outside who only have the opportunity or the chance to get in the venue. And that's exactly what happened yesterday, Wednesday the 20th of November 2019, at Morgan Tsvangirai's house in Harare. There's a lot of people that showed up. They just wanted to hear or see Mr. Nelson Chamisa, but obviously they couldn't see him. But now, what the ZANU-PF people did, or the ZANU-PF police did, they applied force, and they applied brutality, to ferocious brutality, illegal brutality, and there's a lot of people that got injured, and there's a lot of people that were taken as casualties. Okay, so this is the kind of the premise of this video. Okay, so I just thought I'll give you a little bit of a background of what we're going to be doing. Okay. So what we're gonna do now is let me just get rid of my face here, okay, and let's try to put my face over here, and let's try to get this article. Okay, there was an article that was written yesterday by by right, just bear with me 2 seconds. There was an article that was written yesterday by News 24, and we're going to try to read this article together, if that's okay with you. And so at least you can have a proper information and a proper idea of exactly what happened, just in case you missed out everything else. Okay, so the article is actually from 2019, the month of November, and the day was 20th, and it was written 7/6. And it says Zimbabwean police beat opposition supporters after a rally ban. Zimbabwean police beat opposition supporters after a rally ban. Okay, so we're going to try to read this article together. Right, it says Zimbabwean riot police fired tear gas and beat opposition supporters on Wednesday after barring a planned address by the main opposition leader Nelson Chamisa, AFP journalist said. Hundreds of supporters had gathered outside the headquarters in Harare of the Movement for Democratic Change MDC after the party was denied permission to hold a rally in the city's Africa Unit Square. So basically this rally happened after their proposed location of rally was denied permission for. So obviously the MDC supporters, they chose the MDC officials, they chose to have this rally or this speech at their headquarters after their permission was nullified or denounced. Chamisa had been expected to make the address from the office balcony instead. As the crowd danced to party songs blaring from speakers on the balcony, baton-wielding police arrived to disperse them. Okay? As the crowd danced to party songs blaring from speakers on the balcony, baton-wielding police arrived to disperse them. An AFP correspondent saw a man with a bleeding gash on the head and a swollen arm after being hit with a truncheon as he left a food outlet. Several shops and banks yanked down their shutters. Many people were beaten up and injured. MDC spokesperson Daniel Molokeli told AFP, "We condemn the police brutality in the strongest terms." He said Emmerson Mnangagwa's government was as oppressive as the regime of the man he had ousted, former President Robert Mugabe. "It's the same old regime, worse than Smith," he said, referring to Ian Smith, the white minority prime minister of the 1960s and 70s who declared independence in defiance of Britain, the country's colonial power. "Maybe they are afraid what they did to Mugabe in November 2017 will repeat itself," said a man wearing a red MDC beret who identified himself as Terry T, referring to the military-led coup against Mugabe 2 years ago. Chamisa had been expected to speak about the general state of the country, including its entrenchment, economic crisis, corruption, and crumbling health system. Zimbabwe's economy, crippled by decades of mismanagement under Mugabe, has failed to rebound under Mnangagwa, and many Zimbabweans say the situation has got worse. Hyperinflation is wiping out savings. Unemployment is estimated at around 90%. Fuel, medicine, and other essentials are in short supply, and doctors and some public sector workers have stopped going to work as they cannot afford the cost of commuting. Many families live on one meal a day. So this is the journalistic article that was written by News 24, and hopefully they do not mind me using their article. But I chose this article because it totally gives a full picture of exactly what happened yesterday. So Nelson Chamisa, who is the leader of the opposition party in Zimbabwe, which is called the MDC, he was gonna give a speech at a rally, and the initial plan was he's gonna do this speech at Unit Square which is some kind of a square in Harare city, but obviously his permission was denied. But then after that, he chose, or they chose, to do their speech in their headquarters, which is totally within the law. They're not breaking the law. They're giving a speech in at their headquarters, okay, which is totally, it was a peaceful speech. There was no violence, and there was no properties that were getting damaged, and there was no inconveniences or threats to life on the streets. So obviously this thing was absolutely innocent. But then the police came, the ZRP police, which is governed by the ruling party, which is the ZANU-PF, came heavy-handedly, and they were using tear gases. They were using there was something that is called shambox, or some kind of like a whip, and they were even using they probably have been using other even kind of tools, because some people had gush of wounds on their skin, and that could only be caused by something sharp. So who knows what these police officers had in hand. Okay, so I just thought I'll come here, I'll start off with this article so that you have a proper idea of what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So now we're going to get that out of the way. Let's go to actually, before we do that, right, I want to show you something. And this is really imperative, and every single person from Zimbabwe has to be really familiar with this. And I am talking about the Zimbabwean Constitution. Okay, a lot of people, they think that the government, sometimes whatever they are doing is within the law, but sometimes nobody even actually understand and check what's actually written within the Constitution, because the ZANU-PF government, the ruling government party, has to follow what's written in the Constitution, because the Constitution actually stipulates what is the law of the land, and if there is no person who is above the law of the land. So if any single person goes against that stipulation that is being laid down in the Constitution, so that means that whatever individual or organization will be working against the law of the land. So there's quite a few things that I thought I just want to bring to your attention, ladies and gentlemen. And before I even get into this Constitution Act, which by the way it was amended in 2013, and it's called the amended number 20 in 2013. Okay, that's the Zimbabwean Constitution Act. And before I even get into this, I'm calling upon every single Zimbabwean. Yeah, it does not matter where you're from. It doesn't matter if you are in Zimbabwe. It does not matter even if you are in diaspora. It does not matter even if you're into politics. It does not matter even if you do not even vote. You need to be aware of the Constitution. You need to be aware of how your country is being governed. You need to be aware of the guidelines of what the government can and can't do. Okay, because the government actually sat down and put these stipulations on order. So if anybody who goes against what has been written down, it automatically becomes a criminal act. So this is why it's very imperative, ladies and gentlemen, to be aware of the Constitution Act, because it is your Constitution Act. You are the government. It's you, the people. Right? So you, the people, have to be very familiar with what's written within the Constitution. Like I said, it's called the Amendment number 20 Act of 2013. So it was amended in 2013, but everything else is still in place. So most of the things, even though we are in 2019, most of the things are still valid and relevant. Okay, so So I've got a few things that I just wanna. I've got a few sections or few bits. Okay, we're not gonna read the whole Constitution, but we're just gonna go to our points of interest. Excuse me. So, right. First of all, we have to read, as you can see, this is the Zimbabwean, this is the Constitution Act itself, and it says to repeal and substitute the Constitution of Zimbabwe enacted by the President and the Parliament of Zimbabwe. This act may be cited as the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment number 20 at 2013. And at the bottom it says the interpretation in this act, existing constitution means the Constitution of Zimbabwe that came into operation on the 18th of April 1980 is subsequently amended, and the new constitution means the Constitution of Zimbabwe set forth in the schedule. Right, as you all know, we got our independence in 1980 on the 18th of April. This is where this constitution was written down. But then every single time, or every 5 years, or whatever time period it might be, it's always amended. So this is the latest amendment number 20. Okay, so in our case, we're gonna go to the Constitution, and we're gonna go to section 2. All right, now section 2. Let's just go to section 2, and I want us, me and you, to read together. Okay. As a matter of fact, right? I've got even a better idea, right? This Constitution, Zimbabwean Constitution Act that you can see here, is exactly the same as what's written over here. Okay, I'm just going to use this because it's a lot easier to read than the one that I've just downloaded, but it's equally the same. So let me just put my beautiful face over here, and let's get into it. So the first thing that we want to do is to read section 1, because I want you to be a little bit familiar, and for you to get a proper picture of what I want to talk about, or the things I want to allude to. You need to bear with me for a few minutes. Okay, so if you go to section 1, we're gonna see something that is called a preamble or preamble. Now, a preamble is actually the introduction of a statute or a deed stating its purpose or aims and justifications. So basically, these words that are written here is kind of like an introduction of what this whole constitution is all about, and what is the end goal, what is the aim of this constitution, what are they trying to achieve. Okay, so me and you, we're gonna go through this, and we're gonna read it together. It says, "We the people of Zimbabwe, united in our diversity by our common desire for freedom, justice and equality, and our heroic resistance to colonialism, racism, and all forms of domination and oppression, exalting and extolling the brave men and women who sacrificed their lives during the Chimurenga, Umvukela, and national liberation struggles, honoring our forebears and compatriots who toiled for the progress of our country, recognizing the need to entrench democracy, good, transparent, and accountable governance, and the rule of law, reaffirming our commitment to upholding and defending fundamental human rights and freedoms, acknowledging the richness of our natural resources, celebrating the vibrancy of our traditions and cultures, determined to overcome all challenges and obstacles that impede our progress, cherishing freedom, equality, peace, justice, tolerance, prosperity, and patriotism in search of new frontiers under a common destiny, acknowledging the supremacy of Almighty God in whose hands our future lies, resolve by the tenets of this constitution to commit ourselves to build a united, just and prosperous nation founded on values of transparency, equality, freedom, fairness, honesty, and the dignity of hard work, and imploring the guidance and support of Almighty God, hereby making this constitution and commit ourselves of it as the fundamental law of our beloved land. Okay, so that is the preamble, or the statute or deed stating the purpose of this constitution. Okay, by the way, I apologize if you can hear some fireworks going off at the background. Okay, but you know what, that's not going to stop us. So the next thing that we're going to do is we want to go to section 2, because obviously it's a very, very long constitution. So we're going to go to our points of interest, because we really want to know if the government is working or is operating within the means of the law or within the law of the land. And if the government is not operating within the realm of the law of the land, then that is a criminal act, and the government can actually be sued. And we, the people of Zimbabwe, can actually take the government to court because they are breaking the law. So that's why I said before, it's actually imperative for every single person to be familiar with the actual constitution of Zimbabwe. All right, so we're going to go to section 2, and right on section 2, no, we're going to go to chapter 1, and we're going to go to section 3. Section 3, that this is of interest to us, because the thing, I'm just going to go straight to where I think it's relevant to the subject that we are talking about, because I'm talking about police brutality, and I'm talking about police committing criminal act. I'm talking about the government committing human rights abuse and violation against the human citizens, and that kind of a crime, that kind of action warrants a prosecution, because that is a criminal act. So we're going to go to the constitution first before we go to the nitty-gritty of the whole thing. So if you go to the constitution, Zimbabwe constitution, and you go to chapter 2, and if you go to section 3, now the section 3, it says, it talks about the founding values and the principles of Zimbabwe and the citizens of Zimbabwe. Okay, so the founding values and the principles of Zimbabwe, right? And it goes like this: Zimbabwe is founded on respect for the following values and principles: supremacy and the Constitution, the rule of law, fundamental human rights and freedoms, the nation's diverse cultural, religious, and traditional values, a recognition of the inherent dignity and worth of each human being, a recognition of the equality of all human beings, gender equality, good governance, and a recognition of and respect of the liberation struggle. Okay, and it goes on to say, the principle of good governance, which bind the state and all institutions and agencies of the government at every level, include a multi-party democratic political system, an electoral system based on universal adult suffrage and equality of votes, free, fair, and regular elections, adequate representation of the electorate, the orderly transfer of power following elections, respect of the rights of all political parties, observance of the principle of separation of powers, respect of the people of Zimbabwe from whom the authority to govern is derived, transparency, justice, accountability, and responsiveness, the fostering of national unity, peace, and stability with a due regard to diversity of languages, customary practices, and traditions. Okay, and it goes on to say the recognition of the rights of ethnic, racial, cultural, linguistic, and religious groups, persons with disabilities, women, the elderly, youth, and children, veterans of the liberation struggle, the equitable sharing of national resources, including land, due respect of vested rights, and lastly, the devolution and decentralization of governmental power and functions. Okay, so we're gonna go to section 3. No, actually, we're gonna go to section 9. Section 9 is of interest to us of what we're talking about. All right, so let's go and read section 9 of the Zimbabwean Amendment Act of Amendment Act 20 of 2013, and this is the constitution that our present government is operating by, or is abiding by. So we're gonna read what we've got here in the Constitution, and it says on good governance, that's section 9, the state must adopt and implement policies and legislation to develop efficiency, competence, accountability, transparency, personal integrity, and financial probity in all institutions and agencies of government at every level and in every public institution, and in particular, appointments to public offices must be made primarily on the basis of merit. Measures must be taken to expose, combat, and eradicate all forms of corruption and abuse of power by those holding political and public offices. Okay, it goes on to say that the state must ensure that all institutions and agencies of government at every level, in particular commissions and other bodies established by or under the Constitution, are provided with adequate resources and facilities to enable them to carry out their functions conscientiously, fairly, honestly, and efficiently. Okay, so the next section of interest to us is actually section 48. So we're going to go all the way to section 48, and the reason why I want to go to all these sections is for you to have a clear picture of what this constitution is all about, what's actually in it, and you're going to make your own judgment if the present government, the ZANU-PF government led by E.D. Mnangagwa, is actually following the Constitution, or are they breaking the law? And if they are breaking the law, then they ought to be prosecuted. Okay, so let's go to section 48 and let's have a quick read what it actually says, because section 58 is actually about the right to life. So we are talking about we are talking about human rights here. Okay, so we are going to section 48. Right, just bear with me 2 seconds while I'm looking for section 48 here. All right. Right, if I missed it. All right, that's 36. Okay, let's go this way. 42 here, 43. So what we're looking for is section 48 here. 44, 45, 46, 47. There you go, 48, right? So 48 is pretty much about the fundamental human rights and freedoms. Okay, so the fundamental human rights and freedoms of every citizen in Zimbabwe. Okay, and 48 says the right to life. So every person has the right to life. A law may permit the death penalty to be imposed only on a person convicted of murder committed in aggravating circumstances, and the law must permit the court a discretion whether or not to impose the penalty. Okay, the penalty may be carried out only in accordance with the final judgment of competent court. The penalty must not be imposed on a person who was less than 21 years old when the offense was committed, or who was more than 70 years old. The penalty must not be imposed or carried out on a woman, and the person sentenced must have a right to seek pardon or communication of the penalty from the president. Okay, so that's section 58 there, section 48 there. The next section of interest for us is section 51, right? So let's go and see section 51 and see what it actually stipulates in the Constitution. And section 51 again is about the right to human dignity. Every Zimbabwean person has inherent dignity in their private and public life, and the right to have that dignity respected and protected. Okay, and we're going to go again to section 58, which is the right to personal security. Every person has the right to bodily and psychological integrity, which includes the right to freedom from all forms of violence from public or private sources, subject to any other provision of this Constitution to make decisions concerning reproduction, not to be subject to medical or scientific experiments, or to the extraction or use of their body tissue without their informed consent. Right? And we're going to go again to section 53. Section 53 is about the freedom from torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Okay, so that's why it's section 53 stipulates freedom from torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Now it says no person may be subjected to physical or psychological torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Okay, right. The next section that we want to listen to is section 59, right? Actually, before we go to section 59, we want to read section 58, because this is actually quite of relevant of what we are talking about regarding the events that happened yesterday, when a lot of innocent people were brutally beaten up, and some of them were bruised, and some of them had lifetime injuries that's going to affect them. All the injuries that they've sustained, that's going to affect them for the rest of their lives. Do you know what I mean? Life-changing injuries. So we want to know if the government is or did work or did act according to the law here. So section 58, it says the freedom of assembly and association, because that was what it was all about yesterday. It was about Mr. Nelson Chamisa, who is the leader of the opposition party. He was giving a speech to his supporters, and it just happened that a lot of people just love him. So a lot of people just adore him. A lot of people look to him because they are looking for hope. They are looking for something that can change, their lives, that can change their social life, something that can change the way they live, basically. So Nelson Chamisa is their only hope. So you cannot really accuse them for coming to see their hero. I mean, that is absolutely it's a normal thing to do. If you are a hero and you've got a big follow of people gonna come and listen to you. Now, what the police is there to do is to maintain law and order. And from what I understand, and from what I've heard, and from the sources that I've heard from the people who were present on that day, yesterday, Wednesday the 20th of November, at Morgan Changira's house, there was no violence perpetrated by these rally attendees. So really, where did the force came from, and how did the police justify the use of force? So anyway, let's read section 58. It says the freedom of assembly and association. Every person has the right to freedom of assembly and association, and the right not to assemble or associate with others. Okay, so it's totally within the law for every person has got the right or freedom of assembly and association. Okay, no person may be compelled to belong to any association or to attend a meeting or gathering. Obviously, no person can be forced to attend a gathering. Okay, if it's against your will of your wishes, any person who is forcing you to come and attend any kind of a political gathering, they are breaking the law according to the Zimbabwean ZANU-PF constitution. Right. Another section of interest to us is actually section 59, which is the freedom to demonstrate and petition. Okay. Now, the freedom to demonstrate and petition stipulates that every person has the right to demonstrate and to present petitions, but these rights must be exercised peacefully. You see, that's the key word here, peacefully. As long as you exercise your right peacefully, you've got the right to demonstrate and to present petitions. Okay, as long as they are peaceful. That's the key word there, peaceful. Right. Another point, another section of interest to us is actually section 61. Now, section 61 is actually of quite interest to somebody like me who is making commentaries about the government here on social media. And it says, right, it says freedom of expression and freedom of the media. Every person has the right to freedom of expression, which includes the freedom to seek, receive, and communicate ideas and other information, freedom of artistic expression and scientific research and creativity, and academic freedom. Okay, and it goes on to say at number 2, every person is entitled to freedom of the media, which freedom includes protection of the confidentiality of journalist sources of information. Okay, number 3 says broadcasting and other electronic media of communications and freedom of establishment, subject only to state licensing procedures that are necessary to regulate the airwaves and other forms of signal distributions, and are independent of control by government or by political or commercial interest. And it goes on to say, number 4, all state-owned media of communication must be free to determine independently the editorial content of other broadcasts or other communications, be impartial, and afford fair opportunity for the presentation of divergent views and dissenting opinions. Okay, it goes on to say freedom of expression and freedom of the media exclude incitement to violence. Okay, you can't do that in the media. Advocacy of a hatred or hate speech, can do that through the media. Malicious injury to a person's reputation or dignity, malicious or unwarranted breach of person's right to privacy. I think that is fair enough. So the next section of interest to us is actually section 85, which is the enforcement of fundamental human rights and freedom. Okay, so section 85, that's what we're going to be talking about, and that's what we're going to be reading from. Right, just bear with me while I look for section 85, because I'm oh no, we're going up, is it? We're going down, isn't it? I want you to have a proper understanding of your constitution, because you can't be living in the darkness, especially if the government is doing anything illegal. You should be able to go and pinpoint exactly where the government is going wrong, and you can actually, as a citizen, we the people, we've got the right to actually take the government to court, especially if the government is acting against the law of the land or against the written constitution. The thing about us in Zimbabwe, we've got a written constitution. Our constitution is written down. Other countries haven't got a written constitution, like Britain. In England here, they haven't got a written constitution. But in Zimbabwe, it's a republic. We've got a written constitution, Now, a written constitution means we can always go back and refer to what's written in it. Same thing as they do in America. They've got a written constitution, and if a constitution has been written down, any government that acts against the will of the people, we the people, we are supposed to stand up tall and take the government to court, okay, for breaking the law. So we want to read section 85. Section 85, it stipulates that and this is the enforcement of fundamental human rights and freedoms, and this is what it says. Any of the following persons, namely any person acting in their own interest, any person acting on behalf of another person who cannot act for themselves, any person acting as a member or in the interest of a group of class of persons, any persons acting in the public interest, any associations acting in the interest of its members. It is entitled to approach a court alleging that a fundamental right or freedom enshrined in its chapter is being or is likely to be infringed, and the court may grant appropriate relief, including a declaration of rights and award of compensation. The fact that a person has contravened a law does not debar them from approaching a court for relief under subsection 1. Okay, fair enough. I think we got some of right. Okay. Now we're just gonna jump straight to section 200. Okay, we're gonna go straight to section 200 because it is of interest and it is actually relevant to the subject that we are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Zimbabweans, this is really, really important. I can't stress this enough. I want you to be familiar with the law of the land. I want you to be familiar with the constitution. So if any single civil member do anything that is illegal, you should be able to take matters at hand by taking them to court. Okay, now section 200, it talks about the conduct of members of civil service, and members of civil service are people that work for the government. Okay, members of the civil service must act in accordance with the constitution and the law. Yeah, so basically every single member of the government or every single person who is employed by the government should follow this constitution. And if they do not follow this constitution, that is a criminal act, because they will be acting against the law of the land. Right. Now, no members of the civil service may obey an order that is manifestly illegal. Okay. No member of the civil service may, in the exercise of their functions, act in a partisan manner, further the interests of any political party or cause, prejudice the lawful interests of any political party or cause, or violate the fundamental rights or freedoms of any persons. Okay, number 4 says members of the civil service must not be office bearers of any political party. An act of parliament must make provision to ensure the political neutrality of the civil services. Okay, so basically what this section, the conduct of members of civil service, section 200 of amendment 20 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe 2013, it stipulates that if you are a member of a civil service, right, if you work for the government, you're supposed to have a political neutrality. You're supposed to be neutrally political. You've got no government, you've got no political party that you are aligned to. So you can't work in the interest of any political party. You work in the interest of the citizens, because you work, that's why you are a civil servant, and a civil servant actually works for the people. So this is exactly what this section is stipulating. Okay, so we're gonna go straight to section 208. Now section 208, right, if I go too far here, right, let's go to section 208 and let's see what it says. Now okay, if I miss it sorry, right, right? Section 208 is about the conduct of members of security services. Okay, I'm not too sure if I've done this already, but okay, let's just read it again because it looks a bit familiar. Members of the security services must act in accordance with the Constitution and the law. Neither the security services nor any of their members may, in the exercise of their functions, act in a partisan manner, further the interests of any political party or cause, prejudice the lawful interests of any political party or cause, or violate the fundamental rights or freedoms of any persons. Okay, so that's what it says here. And it goes on to say members of the security services must not be active members or office bearers of any political party or organization. Okay, serving members of the security services must not be employed or engaged in civilian institutions except in periods of public emergency. Right, that's what is stipulates there. Now, of interest to us as well is section 219 of the Zimbabwean Constitution, amended 20 Constitution Act of 2013, and we're going to go to section 19, and section 19 actually says, so we're going to read together what section 19 says, because this is actually even of more interest to us, because this is specifically talking about the police. And we saw the police brutality, we saw the police working against the law, operating against the law yesterday at Morgan Tsvangirai's house yesterday on Wednesday the 20th of November. And we want to see if the police did operate in accordance with the written constitution, or were they committing a crime. And if they were, and if we find after reading this that they've actually committed a crime, then we the people of Zimbabwe, we democratic people of Zimbabwe, we can take the police and the government to court. We can actually take the police commissioner to court. We can take the police itself to court, because the court is supposed to be independent of the government, and any single person can take any single person to government if you think that a criminal act has been committed. So if we find, after reading section 219 about police service, if we found out that the government and the police commissioner committed a criminal act, then we can take them to court. Okay, so let's see what it says here. Now, police services and its functions. There is a police service which is responsible for detecting, investigating, and preventing crime, preserving the internal security of Zimbabwe, protecting and securing the lives and property of the people, maintaining law and order, and upholding this constitution and enforcing the law without fear or favor. Okay, number 2, he says the police service must exercise its functions in cooperation with any intelligence services that may be established by law. Anybody that may be established by law for the purpose of detecting, investigating, or preventing particular classes of offenses, and regional and international bodies formed to combat crime. The police service must be non-partisan, national in character, patriotic, professional, subordinate to the civilian authority as established by this constitution. Now, I need to read that again because this is very, very important. My fellow Zimbabweans, please listen to this. It says at number 3, so that is section 219 sub text number 3, says the police service must be non-partisan, national in character, patriotic, professional, and subordinate to the civilian authority as established by this constitution. And it also goes to say an act of parliament must provide for the organization, structure, management, regulation, discipline, and subject to section 223, the condition of service of members of the police force services, right? And in our interest, because it's just mentioned 223 here, so I'm just going to read the 223 and see what 223 says. Okay, remember I mentioned the police commissioner, because for a police force to take action, this kind of authority or instruction is actually an official and executive decision that would have been taken by the police commissioner. So section 223 talks about the functions of police service commission. So let's read what it actually says there. Okay, it says the Police Service Commission has the following functions: to appoint qualified and competent persons to hold posts or ranks in the police service, to fix and regulate conditions of service, including salaries, allowances, and other benefits of members of the police service, to ensure the general well-being and good administration of the police service and its maintenance in a high state of efficiency, to ensure that members of the police service comply with the section 208. Okay, remember which we read 208, and the 208 is actually the conduct of members of security services. Okay, so really the police commissioner, it's his job to make sure that the police officers are doing acting or operating in accordance with the Constitution, section 208, which is the conduct of members of security services. Okay, now it goes on to say to foster harmony and understanding between the police service and civilians. So really the police commissioner is supposed to maintain, or even to establish some kind of a harmony, some kind of a catalyst, some kind of a bridge to bridge between the people and the police, the police officers. Okay, and it goes on to say to advise the president and the minister or on any matter relating to the police service, and to exercise any other function conferred or imposed on the commission by this constitution or an act of parliament. Okay, it goes on to say as well, the Police Service Commission, with approval of the minister responsible for the police service, may make regulations for any of the purposes set out in subsection 1. So ladies and gentlemen, I mean it's quite a very, very long Constitution Act, because it's quite massive and it's quite lengthy. So, but I just wanted to draw your attention to the things in reference to the action that happened yesterday at Morgan Tsvangirai's house in Zimbabwe, in Harare, when a lot of innocent bystanders, innocent people were beaten up by the police for absolutely no reason. So I've read you the Constitution, so I'm going to leave this to your own judgment. Did the police work in accordance with the law? Did the police work in accordance with the Constitution? Did the police commissioner work accordance with the Constitution? This was a peaceful assembly. There was no violence. There was no obstruction of properties. There was no threat of life, or properties of anybody else. These were just innocent people who had just come to hear their hero speaking. That's all they did. But the police were heavy-handed and they were beating people up, and some people have got life-threatening kind of ailments, do you know what I mean, that were caused or perpetrated by these beatings. And some people, do you know, the thing is, a lot of people that think you can only get physical illness or physical trauma, but there's something also called psychological trauma, and that's going to stay with somebody for the rest of their lives. So are you telling me, after we've read this Constitution, after we've read all the sanctions, did the police acted in accordance with the law? Did they follow the law of the land? And if they did, how do you justify that? And if they didn't, is that not a criminal act? Should we the people of Zimbabwe take the police commissioner and the police force to court? Should we take the government to court, because this is illegal? So we the people, we're gonna have to decide about that. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that was the Constitution, and there's something else as well I want to draw your attention to. Okay, this actually is a report of the human rights. It's a report that was done in the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum, and this report was produced by the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum, and I believe it was in 2006. Okay, but generally speaking, nothing much has happened, nothing much has changed here. Okay, so we're just gonna go to page 10, I think, and we want to talk about we're still on this case of the law enforcement, and we want to see what this report says. Okay, it says police officers and other law enforcement agencies are obliged to abide by the law in carrying out their duties. Police officers have far-reaching powers, such as the power to arrest and detain criminal suspects, and these powers must be exercised within the confines of the law and must not be abused. Thus, police officers may arrest and detain only those persons whom they know have committed crimes or whom they have reasonable grounds to suspect of having done so. Any arrest that is not based on just cause is unlawful, both under criminal law and civil law. A police officer may use a reasonable force when it is necessary to overcome resistance to an arrest. Okay, so a police officer can use a reasonable force if the person is actually resisting arrest. So for them to be resisting arrest, that means they would have done a criminal act. So if somebody has perpetrated a criminal act and they are resisting arrest, then the police, according to our constitution, and this is a report that was done by a non-governmental organization which are actually read and understood the police protocol and the police constitution, the constitution and the police rights and responsibilities, and they concluded that only in the case of somebody who is resisting arrest, so somebody who has perpetrated a crime and they are resisting an arrest, then the police can use a reasonable force. Okay, so let's get that right. Now let's carry on. It says, but a police officer may not, please my people, Zimbabwean people, please listen to this next point here. But a police officer may not beat an arrested person who has submitted to the arrest and is not resisting. In fact, a police officer is not allowed to beat anyone unless he is using force that is strictly and reasonably necessary to effect a lawful arrest. Okay, so according to the findings of this non-governmental organization on human rights, and according to their readings of our police act, Zimbabwean Police Act, and our constitution, they have concluded that, I'm going to have to read this again because this is really good. Okay, it says, in fact, a police officer is not allowed to beat anyone unless he is using force that is strictly and reasonably necessary to effect a lawful arrest. Okay, the only time when a police officer is allowed to be given powers to beat somebody, to use unreasonable force or to beat somebody, right, is when that person has committed a crime and that person is resisting arrest. That is the only time. But if that person is just attending a rally, if that person is not done a crime that they're going to be detained for or prosecuted for, whether civil or criminal, if somebody has not even done this crime, they are not allowed to be beaten up. So if a police officer beats somebody up who hasn't actually done a crime that warrants them to be detained or prosecuted, so that police officer is working against the law. So that police officer is breaking the law of the land. In a democratic country like Zimbabwe, if somebody does break the law, then they have to be prosecuted. So, going back to the events that happened yesterday at Morgan Tsvangirai's house, when Mr. Nelson Chamisa was giving a speech, lots of people that attended a rally were beaten up. So basically, the government and the police commissioner and the police officers, they all perpetrated a crime. So we, the people, we've got solid evidence. We've got a case here. And we've got a legitimate case to take these people to court because they actually broke the law. Okay, so we're just going to carry on reading here because this is quite interesting as well. The Constitution of Zimbabwe, the African Charter on Human Rights, Human and People's Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights all prohibit absolutely the use of torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Torture is also prohibited in terms of international customary law, where it has the highest status of jus cogens, meaning peremptory norm that allows for no derogation. In the Pinochet case, okay, now we're gonna go to other case laws. Okay, so for us, what's really important is actually the first three sentences here. It says the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, all of them prohibit absolutely the use of torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishments. Okay, so those are the laws. That's what the Constitution of Zimbabwe says. That's what the African Charter says. That's what the Human and People's Rights says, and that's what the International Covenant says. Okay, and that's what the Civil and Political Rights says. They all absolutely prohibit the use of torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. So if any civil servant, if any military person, individual, if any police officer, if any person who works for the government commits cruel or degrading or inhuman treatment to another ordinary citizen, that is a criminal act, because this is absolutely prohibited. And that's what the word says. That says all prohibit absolutely, which means a definitely no. Okay, so I just wanted you to draw your attention to this report of the non-governmental organization which looks at human rights, even though it was drawn up in 2006, but it's still relevant to this day or to this year in 2019. The next thing I want to draw your attention to, ladies and gentlemen, is this thing here, right? Now, most of the time when the government, the ZANU-PF government is deploying force or is deploying the police to come and try to bring peace and order, law and order, especially to these rallies and everything, they use something that is called POSA, right? And POSA is actually a Public Order and Security Act, and this is what they've been doing for a very long time. Robert Mugabe had been using it, and Emerson Mnangagwa is using it at this very moment of time. It is POSA. So we're going to read what exactly is POSA. Okay, now POSA is actually the Public Order and Security Act. Okay, it is a piece of legislation introduced in Zimbabwe in 2002 by a ZANU-PF dominated parliament. The act was amended in 2007. The chief architects of the act when it was formulated were Jonathan Moyo and Emerson Mnangagwa, who is the current president. Many people regard POSA as an act that helped Robert Mugabe consolidate his power. The law gave untold powers to the police, the Zimbabwe Republic Police. It is still under debate in the new term of rule, and it is inarguably an unfair plot against human rights. POSA has since been applied against demonstrations by the government. On August 1st, 2018, the law was invoked, resulting in the army fatally shooting protesters against alleged rigging of the Zimbabwean general elections 2018. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative, if you are a Zimbabwean, whether you live in Zimbabwe, whether you live in diaspora, or diaspora as we like to call it, or whether you are into politics, whether you're not into politics, whether you belong to any political party, or whether you do not belong to political party, it is imperative for you to understand how your government is, how your country is governed, and how what kind of forces does your police have, right? So I want to go back because I want you to get this point really nailed down into your minds, your heads, okay? Every single time when the opposition party is doing demonstrations, right? Any single time when the people the people of the Republic of Zimbabwe are unhappy with the government, and they come together in solidarity, and they've got a point across. The government have got a piece of legislation which has been incorporated into the constitution, and the authors of this legislation is actually a guy called Jonathan Moyo and the current president, which is E.D. Mnangagwa, right? So let's go and familiarize ourselves with what is a POSA again, okay? Now, the Public Order and Security Act, because this is an act. If it's an act, it's a legislation, it's an act of parliament, so which is something that is it's solid. It's something that the government can just refer to and use at any given moment. Okay, I mean, how draconian is that? How tyrannical is that? But anyway, it says the Public and Security Act POSA is a piece of legislation introduced in Zimbabwe in 2002 by a ZANU PF dominated parliament. The act was amended in 2007. The chief architects and the act when it was formulated were Jonathan Moyo and Emerson Mnangagwa. Many regard POSA as an act that helped Robert Mugabe consolidate his power. The law gave untold powers to the police, the Zimbabwe Republic Police. It is still under debate in the new term of rule, and it is inarguably, and this is really important here, listen to this, it is inarguably an unfair plot against human rights. So really, this act of parliament, which was introduced by Jonathan Moyo and the current president of Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa, is actually a violation of human rights. So really, this is actually an illegal. It's illegal. This POSA thing, it has to be absolutely abolished. It shouldn't be an act of parliament. So this is working against the law. And look what happened in 2018, right? POSA has since been applied against demonstrations by the government. On August 1st of 2018, the law was invoked. So they put forward this law in 2018 on August the 1st. And what happened on August the 1st? It resulted in the army fatally shooting protesters against alleged rigging in the Zimbabwe general elections of 2018. So you see what I mean? This is an act of parliament which is tyrannical, which is draconian, which the government can just use at any time. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to give you all this information so that you would understand, because we need to be more familiar and we need to be more acquainted with how our government is running. Okay, just because there is a government, a political power that is running the country, it does not mean you have to be ignorant or oblivious to the laws of the land. In Zimbabwe, we are lucky. We've got a written constitution. In England, in the UK, they do not have a UK constitution. They do not have a written constitution. But we do have. That's why in the UK, before a bill is passed, it has to be debated by MPs in Parliament. Unlike in Zimbabwe, everything is written down on piece of paper. So we have to follow a legislation. We have to follow the laws of the land. We have to follow what's written in the Constitution. Okay, so that's why I wanted you guys to understand exactly how your country is run, so you are more familiar with the politics. Okay, now ladies and gentlemen, I've given you everything. I've shown you the Constitution, I've shown you the articles, I've shown you what POSA is, I've shown you what the conclusion of the non-government organizations who are looking at human rights, their conclusions that they've drawn upon the police and their actions and their operations. I've given you all this information. I've given you all the points, the main points, relevant points that are in the Constitution, the amended Constitution of Zimbabwe 2013, which is still in place right now. So you should be more familiar with everything now. Yeah. Now I want to draw your attention now right. We've just talked earlier on about the POSA, yeah, and the POSA, the POSA Act, or the Public Order and Security Act here. If you go on this act and if you go on section 24, right, it says, because you have to read what's written on it, it says, and by the way, you can actually just download these things. I only downloaded it on the internet, so you too can download it. Okay, so if you go on the Public Order and Security Act, chapter or Security Act, and if you go to chapter 11 to 17, and you go to section 24, let's just read what it says here. It says, organizer to notify a regulating authority of intention to hold public gathering. So according to this act, if a political party is going to hold some kind of a rally or some kind of a meeting or some kind of a speech or some kind of an assembly, it has to notify the regulating authority, which in this case I would presume is the police or the police commissioner, to notify them this is what we're going to be doing, okay, according to this act. Okay, and it says subject to okay, let's read that again. Organizer to notify a regulating authority of intention to hold public gathering, subject to subsection 5. The organizer of a public gathering shall give at least 4 clear days a written notice of the holding of the gathering to the regulating authority for the area in which the gathering is to be held. Right. So before any political party wants to do an assembly, they have to give out a written notice 4 days prior to this meeting taking place. And from my understanding, from my sources, I know that the MDC, they actually was gonna do some kind of a meeting at the National Unity Square or African Unity Square in Harare on Sunday, right? But obviously they weren't permitted to do that for some reason, so they decided to do that at their headquarters, which is so if you count the days, Sunday 1, Monday, Tuesday, Monday 2, Tuesday 3, right, Wednesday, that's 4 days. So the MDC, Nelson Chamisa and the MDC were working or operating in accordance to the law, according to this POSA Act, right? So really nobody has broken the law. If there's anybody who actually broke the law, it was actually the police commissioner and the police, right? And it goes on to say right, provided that the regulating authority may, in his discretion, permit short notice to be given. For the avoidance of doubt, it is declared that the purpose of the notice required by subsection 1 is to afford the regulating authority a reasonable opportunity of anticipating or preventing any public disorder or breach of the peace. Now, to interpret what's written here, if you give the reason why they give 4 days notice is for the people, like for the police, to make sure that a law to apply, to make sure that law and order is being implemented in wherever this assembly or this gathering is going to be. Now, this gathering, what happened in Zimbabwe, in Harare, at the Morgan Tsvangirai headquarters, the headquarters of the MDC, which is the opposition party. And there had been several, if thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of assemblies that has been done before. So 4 days is a lot. 4 days is more than enough to prepare for the police to maintain peace and order. Because the police, their job really is to go and maintain peace and order. That's the definition. That's the responsibility of the police. The police is not there to beat people up or arrest people up. Of course, if you do a criminal act, yes, you can be arrested and be prosecuted, right? But you can be prosecuted and be arrested. But if people have given 4 days notice, which is long enough, in Harare at the MDC headquarters, and this was going to be an indoor meeting or assembly. It just happened that there were more people that came to see or to take a glimpse or even just to support their hero, and they just happened to be outside of the building. So in this case, what the police should have done was to maintain law and order, peace and order. There was no looting that was done. There was no damage to furniture. There was no threat to other civilians. Nobody was committing no crime. So really, the heavy-handedness of police on the people was uncalled for, was unaccounted for. So that's why I'm saying we the people, we've got a case here to take the Zimbabwean police force to court, the Zimbabwean Commission to court, even the government itself to court, because they are working against the acts. They are working against the law of the land. They are working against the Constitution. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I hope I give you a clear picture of everything that has been happening. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you a video. Okay, I'm going to show you a video of exactly all the things that have happened. And this video, I'm sorry, it's going to be for those people that can be easily offended, or I need to give you a disclaimer there. It's kind of horrific because people are getting beaten up. Some people, like elderly people, they're just getting beaten up. So if you are of the if you are one of those people that have got suffers from nervous breakdown and all that, please, I'm warning you. I'm giving you a disclaimer because some of these scenes are very, very horrific indeed. But I want you to show this, so I'm just gonna play this video and I want you to make a judgment for yourself. Now, as you can see, right, you can see that this is all the place, right? These are all innocent people that are just getting beaten up for no reason. They haven't done a crime, they haven't done anything at all. Innocent mothers, innocent fathers, elderly. I mean, look at this old lady here, she's just getting beaten up for no reason. And the ferocity and the brutality and the amount of force these police officers are using on these people, I mean, this is totally uncalled for. So I'm just gonna put that again. Okay, let's see if I can put that video back again. Right, so let's have a look again. Right, look at this. These are all innocent people. Look at this guy. Right, they're chasing people. So you tell me, what crime have these people done? The only crime was to come to attend a rally where the opposition leader was making a speech, and all they wanted was just listening to the speech. There was no looting. There was nobody's life which was being threatened. These are very, very innocent people. They're not carrying no weapons. They are not posing any threat or risk to anybody else, but they're just getting beaten up. I mean, let's see it one more time. Right? So you tell me, I've given you the account of the Constitution. I've given you all the information about the act that Jonathan Moyo and Emerson Mnangagwa have drafted, to use that, because that's what they use here, right? That POSA Act. And you tell me if this is justified. I mean, let's play it one more time, because this is really, really horrific. This is really disgusting, despicable, and called for. People are getting beat up. Look at that, right? Yeah, and they're even whistling. They're making those whistling sounds. For them, this is fun and joy. Beating up people like animals. This is very barbaric. So we, the people, we've got every right to take the government and the police force to court. This is a heinous crime that is being committed against the people, innocent people, right? So we can't stand and just wait and see these people doing this, because obviously they are perpetrating a criminal act. If people are doing a criminal act, they have to be brought to justice. And if somebody is not following the law of the land, we, the people, we have to take the law into our own hands. Okay, so the last video, ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you. This is really, really, really sad, and it's definitely gonna make some of you cry. And the lady that you're seeing here, very, very innocent lady, she was just a passing by. She was just minding her own business. She wasn't even going to the rally. She was actually traveling somewhere else to see a friend or a family member. She had nothing to do with Chamisa. She had nothing to do with the opposition political party. She had nothing to do with the gathering. She was just minding her own business. But this lady, she ended up getting beaten up so bad that her leg got broken and she couldn't even walk. Okay, I'm going to try to translate what's being said here, because she's going to be speaking in Shona, in my language. So for those people that don't speak Shona, I'm going to try to translate what she is saying here. But this is really, really horrific. This young lady here, she was on her way somewhere else, traveling, minding her own business, never did no crime. She's not holding no weapon. She's not posing any threat of she's not posing any threat to anybody, right? She is not disturbing the peace. She's just minding her own business, but she got beaten up so bad that her leg got broken. But what made it even worse, ladies and gentlemen, is that yesterday all the doctors were on strike in Zimbabwe. So really, there was nowhere where people could get treatment, because all the doctors were in strike. And why were they on strike? Because of the incompetency of the same government which is perpetrating violence and committing crime and working and operating against the law of the land. So ladies and gentlemen, let's watch this video together. Like I said, for those of the nervous breakdown, of those people who are easily offended, or people who are easily emotional, I need to warn you, because this is very distressing. This lady, young lady, got her legs broken, and she was just an innocent passing by. Okay, all right, let's listen to this.
Saka munoti kuti neka nezva maitwa izvi kurohwa kwamaitwa mama munoti kuti nekurohwa kwamaitwa were you part of the people who were supposed to listen to Nelson Chamisa? Mamuri pakati pevanhu here vangu vachida kutaura nani. Saka makwara papi sofa. Machikoka gumbo. Can I see? As you can see, izvezvizvi mama vachikoka paibvi. Handisi kuziva kuti zvichazovei kubva nhasi kusvika kuti vachakwanisa kuwana here mahospital anenge akavhura, because right now madoctors akavhara, hakuna munhu angakwanise kunge achirapa amai avo. Mama, munoti kudii nezvaitika izvi? Munoti kudii nezvaitika izvi mama?
I'm gonna give my little commentary after the video is finished, okay?
Munobva kupi? Munobva kuwedza. Saka mutauri mama pika muchenda ku.
Nakunyabira. Nona mwingina wangu kwa. Kutika na pana.
Ropa lese pasiro parengere.
Pane
ropa. Muka chazisa kuchika paraba paire.
Paraba.
Kuchi?
Katonda naye ngativenaye panapa tokunatama manisi pakusa
vanhu mufonere vakatora tipanapa vari kutirova tikakwanisa kumufona mapikicha
madakita sema
I was putting on this jacket and they came and attacked me right there, the robots.
For which publication do you work for?
I'm a freelance. Yeah. What's your name? Henry Chimbit. They just attacked me, but it appears though they know me and they just came right on
Right. I'm going to try to give a little commentary and we're going to play that video again, okay? For people that do not understand Shona, I know that you could probably pick up some English words there. Like I said, this lady, she was on her way to somewhere else. She was actually traveling out of town. She was going to the outskirts of Harare, and she was just passing through. She just happened to be passing through there, and for some reason she got beaten up, and her leg is broken. She's on the floor. She can't walk, obviously, and the doctors are on strike. So all those people around here are trying to, some of them are journalists, they're trying to get a clear picture of what happened. And this is just an innocent lady, and she was asked if, because there is a trail of blood just behind her, and they were asking her if all that blood was hers, and she said yes, and she said she's been bleeding. And so this is the situation that I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. The other gentleman that you saw was actually a journalist, a freelance journalist, and he said in Shona that he thinks they know him. They actually targeted him because they know him, because he was doing nothing. He was just a freelance journalist. I don't know what he's doing, taking pictures or just reporting the scenario, the situation, but he got bitten in the head. So obviously you get a clear picture of a violation of human rights and a government and a police force that is using unnecessary force on innocent citizens. So this, for me, warrants prosecution, because this is a criminal act, especially when you are perpetrating violence on an innocent people. This lady, who knows who's going to pay your medical bills? Who is going to look after her? Who is she going to be able to walk again? And who is going to answer for that? So this is the things that we're dealing with. So for those people that do not speak Shona, so this is exactly what's happening. So, but I'm just going to put it back again, and if there's anything else I've missed, I'll say it again. Okay, so let's play that video again for you to listen and to watch.
Saka munoti kudini ka nezvamaitwa izvi kurohwa kwamaitwa mama munoti kudini kurohwa kwamaitwa were you part of the people who were supposed to listen to Nelson Chamisa? Muri pakati pevanhu here vanga vachida kutaura naNelson Chamisa? Saka makwara papi so far? Machikoka gumbo. Can I see? As you
can see there, a leg, there's something protruding from a knee or a kneecap. It's just been moved from its normal position. So obviously, and you can see this lady is totally traumatized. You can see that the look in her eyes, she's totally traumatized. Okay, and she just alluded earlier on that what she was actually trying to do, she was trying to cross the road, minding her own business, going her own way, and the police actually were stopping her, barricading her from crossing the road. Okay, so let's go.
You can see izvezvi mama vachikoka paibvi handisi kuziva kuti zvichazovei kubva nhasi kusvika kuti vachakwanisa kuwana here mahospital anenge akavhura, because right now madoctors akavhara, hakuna munhu angakwanise kunge achirapa amai avo. Mama munoti kudii nezvaitika izvi? Munoti kudii nezvaitika izvi mama?
Mungakwanisa kubatsira nezita nemakodi?
Munobva kupi?
She's clearly traumatized. I mean, these journalists, I mean, some of them are very unprofessional. They're asking silly questions, but you can see that the lady is absolutely traumatized, and right. So the other gentleman that you can see behind the lady, he's trying all his best to lift her up. But obviously, if somebody's got a broken leg, you can't just lift them. What really is supposed to be there is a paramedics. It's a professional, supposed to be nurses, people who knows how to deal with this situation properly. Because if you leave somebody up who has had a broken leg, you're going to even cause more severe damages. So the other people are saying, please don't lift it up. She got a broken leg. That's what's happening.
So the
I was putting on this jacket.
So this is the journalist, and he's telling himself his own anecdotal account as well, what happened to him. And he said he was putting on this jacket, and he was just a freelance a journalist who was taking pictures, trying to cover a story. Then he got targeted by the police. And they knew that he's a journalist, and he's wearing a journalist jacket which clearly identifies who he is.
They came and attacked me. Right there, the robots.
For which publication do you work for?
I'm a freelance. Yeah. What's your name? Henry Chimbit.
See, you can see this guy. Yeah, at the back here, he got bitten at the back of his head.
They just attacked me, but it appears though they know me. And they just came right now.
Let me go.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I've tried to give you a clear picture of exactly what's happening in Zimbabwe and how the police, how the government is working against the law of the land, law of the constitution. Innocent people are suffering for no reason. We've got economic, social, political problems. Now people can't even attend innocent rallies. So who is there to protect the people when people are all their human rights are being violated? Who is there to protect them? Now, if the police, as you can see, I've presented to you a very, very honest and it's evident case that the police and the government, the police commissioner, they all totally operated against the law. So this is a case we, the people, have to prosecute these people. We have to prosecute the government. Because once the government fails to protect its own citizens, it's no longer a government. Once a government fails to follow the constitution, it's no longer a government. Once a government starts to operate against the law, it's no longer a government. This is the same ruling party that stipulated parliament acts, but it goes against those written acts. So this is illegal. So we the people, that's why I've made this video, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully give you a clear picture. And to summarize this video quick, ladies and gentlemen, I want you, every single Zimbabwean, to be familiar with the constitution of Zimbabwe. I want every single person in Zimbabwe to be familiar with the POSA Act, okay, that was introduced in 2002 by, is it 2002 or 2007, something like that, by Jonathan Moyo and Emerson Mnangagwa, and this POSA Act, it has to be abolished because it's totally illegal. That's what the government always rely on to try to ban and to use force against demonstrations or against any sort of assembly in Zimbabwe. Okay, this has to be abolished because this is totally against the law and it's a human rights violation. Okay, and the other thing I want you to be familiar with, ladies and gentlemen, is to know that you are the people. You've got the citizen rights to make sure that the constitution is being followed. You've got the citizens' rights to make sure that whoever is breaking the law, no person is above the law. If a law has been stipulated and has been incorporated into a constitution, that law has to be followed and be adhered to. So if somebody is not following the law, they have to be prosecuted. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and I'm gonna try next time to come up with even more videos trying to educate and trying to share information that's happening in Zimbabwe. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I know it's quite a long video. This is my first time to do this one, but you know what, hopefully I've paint a clear picture, and hopefully I've given you enough information that can help you to understand the political situation in Zimbabwe. And I just want to say thank you for joining me. My name is Tapiwa.